Shreyas Sekar is an assistant professor of operations management at the University of Toronto Scarborough. Prior to this, he was a postdoctoral fellow at the Harvard Business School's Laboratory for Innovation Science. Professor Sekar received his PhD in computer science from Renassa Polytechnic Institute, where he was awarded the Robert McNaught Prize for Best Dissertation for his work on non-discriminative algorithmic pricing. Currently, his research is centered around the economics of information on e-commerce platforms that applies techniques from machine learning and optimization. He has worked closely with companies such as Wayfair, Freelancer to better understand how their platforms can leverage information to improve core outcomes. I am very excited to welcome you to the stage, Professor Sekar. The hashtag red carpet stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Sisha. I hope you all can hear me okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of hashtag red carpet. My name is Shreyas Sekar. I'm an assistant professor of operations at the UTSC Department of Management, and I'm very, very excited to be here talking to you all about something that's a little different from what I think you heard yesterday. So, instead of talking about what all the cool kids are doing in marketing and in the digital world, I want to talk about an ancient industry. That's right, the 30-year-old e-commerce industry. My God, I think as far as the digital world is concerned, 30 years is a lifetime. But what I want to do today is talk about how the advances in AI and big data are completely transforming this industry. So that's all I'm going to give you as a teaser. Now, before I dive right in, a quick shout out to Anurag, Sisha, Kendall, and everyone who's been working their butts off organizing this conference. Thank you so much, guys. We wouldn't all be here without you. All right. So without further ado, let me begin right away. And Sisha, feel free to interrupt me if there are any technical challenges going on. I hope everything's working all right. All right. So, thank you. All right, let's begin with a fun exercise. So I want you all to put yourself in the shoes of a seller on Amazon who, no pun intended, is interested in selling women's slippers. Okay. So let's say that, you've made all the right contracts, you manufactured a clearly superior product, your price is super competitive, your supply chains are fixed, you're raring to go. So you put this product up on Amazon, which is clearly the best way to go forward. You wait for a month, there's no sales. You wait for a couple of months, no one's even looking at your product, and you're waiting for 3 months and then really nothing's happening. What the hell is going wrong with this? Well, you decide to test your hypothesis. You go on Amazon and you search for women's slippers. Well, guess what? You're competing with 40,000 other people. Not one, not two, but there are 400 search pages on Amazon. So unfortunately, even though you have an excellent product, people are not even finding your product and clicking on it, let alone purchasing it, right? That's a big problem. And I want us all to do a fun guessing game to begin with, okay? Sisha, this would be a good time to start the first poll. What percentage of consumers on Amazon do you think even go beyond the first page of results? Forget page 400 or 300. How many people do you think even go beyond the first page? I'm sure there are 4 options in front of you, so go ahead and click the one that you think is the most appropriate. Sisha, would you like to explain the process?
Thank you, Professor Sekar. Yes, I will. So in the live stream, you're on the right-hand side, you're going to see a little widget and it says polls. The first question that Professor Sekar is asking is what percentage of consumers on Amazon search beyond the first page of results? So just take a couple seconds. Tell us what you think. In the same widget, you'll see Q&A. If that's what you're seeing, click to the left where it says polls. So let's just give them 5 seconds or so to make their choices, and then I'll share my screen. Thank you so much for participating.
Oh, I don't think I'll have to introduce Amazon to any of you. So I hope this kind of gets you all in the right frame of mind for the rest of this talk. I see Sisha sharing her results. I'm excited.
So can you see the screen with the results? Clearly shows. Did you think that was what the guests were going to suggest?
No, I'm pretty surprised. I expected people to guess 50 to 60%, and I have to admit this is a pretty savvy crowd because people are pretty much, I think, on the dollar here. For those of you who guessed 20 to 30%, you're pretty much on track. So good job, everyone. Because the right answer is that, the right answer, is that 70 to 80% of Amazon users don't even bother to go beyond the first page. In other words, 20 to 30%, only those that fraction go beyond the first page. How insane is that, right? You have an amazing product. Your price is so competitive, but by the vicissitudes of fate or your dice roll or whatever the algorithm decides, if you're not on the first page of search results, no one's even going to be looking at your product. That's very, very harsh, but that's the reality of the times we live in, because increasingly we are in a world where algorithms control the outcomes that we all end up facing, right? And it does not matter that you have an amazing product. The only thing that matters is that the algorithm gives prime time to your product. Okay. Now, this idea that 70 or 80% of people don't bother scrolling beyond the first page is just one small data point in a much larger effect that psychologists refer to as the position bias. Now, that's a fancy term for something that all of us have experienced, right? What the position bias or the position effect means is that if I show you a bunch of items on a web page, then more people are likely to examine the top ranked items than the ones at the bottom, right? We're all humans. We all have limited attention spans, and none of us can kind of carefully examine hundreds, thousands, or even 40,000 items, okay? And as more and more users gravitate towards mobile platforms, this position effect is becoming more and more prominent. Now, I want you all to take a second and think through the implications of the position effect. What does this mean if you're the platform? Well, to me, the number one implication of the position effect is that ranking is the same as a recommendation algorithm. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what is a recommendation algorithm? All these online platforms have hundreds and thousands of items, right? These could be news articles, these could be products, these could be pages to show. Now, what a recommendation algorithm does is it selects some subset of these items and shows users what it thinks is relevant and trendy. Now, what about a ranking? Well, a ranking does show users all of the items, but by deciding on a specific order in which to show items, you're implicitly recommending the items at the top than the ones at the bottom, right? So look at the small Amazon link that you see on the right-hand side of my screen. Now, clearly, people are going to pay a lot more attention to the top 3 search results when you search for a workstation than the ones that come on page 2, page 3, page 4, and so on, right? That's exactly why ranking is the new recommendation, because by selecting an order, you're implicitly recommending that your customers purchase the first, second, or third items. But it's a much cooler and much smoother version of recommendations, because unlike recommendations, you're not taking any choice away from your customers. You're still showing them all the items. You're giving them the freedom to browse as much as they prefer and then make a choice, right? So this is why platforms are increasingly paying attention to ranking and ranking algorithms. Now, if you're like me, you're going to have a lot more questions than answers at this point. So let's go through all these questions, and I'll try to cover as much as I can in this talk. So question number 1, if you're the platform, how do you come up with an algorithm for product ranking, right? this is not an obvious question which has an obvious answer. Now, question number 2, we saw how hard is it for sellers to get ranked in the first page. So what can sellers do to influence their position? Question number 3, if you're a buyer, how is your choice being affected by the order in which products are being displayed to you, right? And at the last part of this talk, if time permits, I want to talk about one of my favorite tools in marketing, that's A/B testing and how prominent it's become in e-commerce or online platforms. All right, so let's dive right in. Now, sign of the times, when I'm talking about e-commerce, I can't escape the fact that we're all living in a lockdown and we're in the time of COVID-19. So what has the pandemic done to e-commerce or online shopping in general? Well, has the pandemic completely transformed online shopping and completely changed the rules of the game? Well, kind of, sort of, not really. But what the pandemic has done is it's really accelerated existing trends. So in Canada right now, 87% of the internet population have made at least one online purchase in the last 12 months. That's insane, right? You almost have the entire population of Canada using online shopping. The second data point that I want to point out is that online spending has grown by 72% in 2020. You know what's really funny about this? In 2019, the government commissioned a study, and the study said that online spending would double in the next 5 years. Guess what? We're just in 2021 and online spending has already doubled. Forget 5 years, the life cycle is just halving every time. Now, I have no doubts that I don't have to convince this crowd the importance of e-commerce or the digital transformation. But what about recommendation algorithms, right? Are these important or are they just a drop in the ocean? Well, turns out that recommendation algorithms matter big time. So a recent independent study by McKinsey estimates that 35% of purchases on Amazon come from product recommendation algorithms. That's a pretty good number, right? And rightly so, because that's why Amazon is spending millions of dollars hiring data scientists to actually come up with these algorithms. Now, forget Amazon. If you look at the other platforms, YouTube, Netflix, Twitter, the effect of recommendations is much more. On YouTube, for example, 60% of clicks and views come from the recommendations that the algorithm makes, either on your homepage or on the sidebar that you all see. So really, recommendation algorithms are super duper important. They're here to stay, and no matter which side of the fence you're in, right? Whether you're a data scientist, whether you're a marketing specialist, whether you're an HR, you need to understand the role of these algorithms. So with that as my side note, I want to get started with what the talk is about. Now, as is the right way to do so in marketing, I think when you talk about a question, the first and the best way to approach this question is from the side of the consumer. So what effect do these product ranking algorithms have on the consumers, right? And I want to tackle this question from the lens of a collaboration that I had with Wayfair. Now, for those of you who don't know Wayfair, Wayfair is an online retail platform, just like Amazon. Wayfair specializes in home goods, particularly furniture, appliances, and so on. Funny enough, when I gave this talk a couple of years ago, I mentioned that Wayfair is a $3 to $5 billion company. Currently, Wayfair is a $15 billion company. So that should tell you how much the pandemic has actually helped these e-commerce firms. So now, just like Amazon, you can go on Wayfair, you can search for any product that you like, let's say a sofa, and you can purchase the one that you like. Great. But in addition to this, Wayfair, just like Amazon and many other platforms, is increasingly relying on these special sale events. So for example, if you were on Wayfair a couple of weeks ago, you would have seen 2 sale events, a small appliance sale and a fall lighting refresh. Now, each sale event comes with its own unique fixture of products and its own unique discounts, offers, and duration. Okay. So what Wayfair wanted to do was it wanted us to come up with a product ranking algorithm to maximize customer engagement. And honestly, I think this is something that's really at the heart of how e-commerce is changing. Okay. Now, traditionally, when I went to grad school, all of the questions that we talked about in e-commerce was, how do we come up with prices to maximize profits? Now that's no longer the only world that we live in, because increasingly these platforms care a lot about customer engagement. They care about how long customers spend on the platform. They care about how many products are added to your cart. They care about repeat visits and so on. And they even care about how many products customers click on. Okay? So if you're in the world of e-commerce, I think it's time to come up with a new paradigm that revolves around customer engagement. Now, how do product ranking algorithms make a difference in customer engagement? Well, to answer the question, I want you all to put yourself in the mind of a typical consumer. So you enter wayfair.com or .ca, you come on the website, and you decide to click on this small appliance sale. Well, why don't we see what happens? Voila. So I click on the product, I'm on my mobile platform, and this is literally the first 4 products that I see. So let me kind of work through the mindset of a typical consumer, okay? So I'm looking at this, I see, well, there's a mixer, there's another mixer, there's an ice cream maker. Wow, didn't know there was a thing. There's another mixer. These products seem interesting, but they're also quite expensive. And to be completely honest, I'm not in the zone looking for a mixer right now. So while this event could have been super interesting, I don't think this is for me. I'm just going to leave this website and do something more interesting, maybe go around browsing cat memes. Okay, so unfortunately, because of the products that Wayfair showed in its top listings, this event did not appeal to me. Okay, that means that the ranking used by Wayfair actually ended up losing a customer. By the way, if these were the actual 4 products that Wayfair used in this particular event. Now, what if we live in this alternate reality where Wayfair tries a different 4 events? So let's try working through that reality. So now, instead of a bunch of mixers, we have a steamer, a microwave, an air fryer, and a NutriBullet. Now they have my attention because, hey, I'm a professor in a business school. If anybody could use a steamer, it's definitely me, right? I'm supposed to be wearing suits and all that all the time. Actually, funny story, I did end up buying a steamer sometime last year. Thanks to the pandemic, I've not gone out anywhere, but I've been using it to steam all my masks. So if you're thinking about purchasing a steamer for your face masks, you really should. All right, back to our main show. So now I come here, I look at these 4 products, I'm instantly hooked, right? Because I'm looking at the products, these seem pretty appealing to me. And I've just moved to Toronto a year ago, by the way. So, I could use a bunch of these, including an air fryer and a NutriBullet. So immediately my mind is thinking, well, this seems like a super interesting event. The prices are affordable. You know what? Before I go ahead and purchase a steamer, maybe I should scroll more and check out what else is there, right? So I hope you're seeing what's happening here, because by moving from what could be a popular ranking, right? All of these products, by the way, have like thousands of reviews, to one that's more diverse, immediately Wayfair is hooking and getting more customers to engage with the platform. And we'll talk about the effect of diversity a few slides later, but the main message that I want you to take from this is on the role of information, okay? Now, typically how e-commerce platforms have thought about information is that the presentation of information, aka what information is being shown to its consumers, can affect what products are purchased. That's absolutely true. But you know what? Not only can information change your purchase decisions, but information, or how you present information to consumers, can completely transform whether or not consumers even engage with your platform in the first place. This is super important in a world where customers are increasingly going to Amazon and a bunch of these platforms as their first point of contact, okay? Historically, when I wanted a product, I would go on Google, I would search for the product, and I would look at what links come up. That's no longer the case. You have a majority of customers, by the way, these numbers increased in 2020 and 21, go to Amazon as their first point of contact. And if you're Wayfair, I think your #1 goal is to draw these customers away from Amazon so that when you want a furniture, when you want an appliance, Wayfair is the first place you go and search, right? So we talked about how 70 to 80% of customers drop off after the first page. Now, that's just a very broad brush. what our studies with Wayfair revealed is that the effect is actually much more subtle. For every 3 or 4 products that you show a customer, you have up to 10% of customers dropping off. Okay, so your curve, as you can see here, is pretty continuous. This is usually called as a power law curve, because at every point in time, after every few products, you're having customers jump ship, right? So that's why rankings are so important. It's not even important. It's not just whether you show a product in the first page or not. Every rank, 1, 2, 3, is super important and is a decision that you have to pay careful attention to. But here's another cool insight that we found from this study. The magnitude of this position effect, in other words, how many customers drop off, depends most importantly on the type of product that's being shown to your customers. So if you show a camera, for example, your customers could be more judicious. They could take the time, look at lots and lots of products. They could want to be well informed before a purchase. Now, another product such as women's slippers, on the other hand, you don't have this level of careful searching. Customers may just look at the top 5 products, click on the one that they think is the most appealing, and end up purchasing it. So the number one thing you have to do is to understand how the position effect affects the product that you have in mind. All right. So with that, I'm going to move from the consumer side of things to the platform side of things. And honestly, I'm going to ask probably what is the most important question of this talk. How on earth do these platforms come up with product ranking algorithms? Okay. We've established how important they are for consumers and for sellers. So what is the algorithm that these platforms use? What is their modus operandi? Well, the answer to that question, honestly, is popularity, popularity, and popularity. Okay, so here's what these platforms do. They come up with what is called a composite popularity metric. This metric gives you a sense of how popular each product is in multiple senses of that word. So for example, Amazon's popularity metric involves, number 1, the consumer reviews and the average score, how fresh these scores are, how many positive reviews the seller has in this case, what's the price of the product, and how many people or what percentage of people click on this product. Now, all of these different popularity metrics are fed into a black box. Why do I say it's a black box? Because I, as an average consumer, I'm not aware of the exact formula that goes into its computation, although some of us can reverse engineer it. So for those of you who were around in the 2000s, you might remember that search engine optimization was a pretty big deal in the early days, right? So these days, pretty much everyone who was into search engine optimization has kind of shifted gears into optimizing your placement on the Amazon search. That's how important product placement is, okay? So we have a composite popularity metric. We know exactly, or sort of, how Amazon ranks products. Unfortunately, the story does not end here, because there are a number of challenges which make this much more difficult, and which is where someone like me who has a background in machine learning comes into the picture. Because even if your popularity metric is set in stone, computing that popularity score for each product is not that easy, right? So one is that for tons of customers, right? Amazon does have a few dedicated customers who purchase a lot, but the majority of customers have very little data on the platform, right? We always talk about big data and how big data is changing the world, but guess what? Even if you're a behemoth like Amazon, an equally important problem is small data. How do I come up with a recommendation when I don't have enough data about my customer? Okay. Number 2 is that the assortment is constantly changing, right? So computing a popularity metric or a relative popularity metric for a product becomes much more difficult. And 3, and perhaps this is really again the point of this talk, is that it's really hard to assess product popularity because of the position bias. I want you all to think about this for a second. Okay, why is this a challenge? Because of the position bias. Now imagine that you have 2 shoes. So one of them is ranked at, let's say, rank 5. That's kind of in the top half of the page. The other one is ranked at, let's say, rank 15. That's kind of in the second half of the first page. But hey, both of these products get 100 clicks. So does that mean that they're equally popular? I want you all to be careful when you say yes, because it definitely is not the case that their 2 products are equally popular. Why is that? Because we know from the position effect that more consumers pay attention to the product at rank 5 than the number of consumers who pay attention to the product at rank 15. So the 15th ranked product getting 100 clicks is actually a much bigger deal than the 5th ranked product getting the same number of clicks. Okay? So you have to be very careful. The number of clicks does not imply popularity. You have to normalize that by the position effect or how many views a product is getting, which is very difficult for platforms to do because platforms don't always track eyeballs. It's easier said than done, nor do they track keystrokes all the time. Okay. By the way, I don't know if you're looking at the subtitles underneath, but they're quite funny. So, all right. So with that, let me talk about the machine learning framework that these platforms use to identify and come up with a product ranking. Okay. And the framework is basically a cycle. So here's what happens. In the beginning, there was no data. And then the algorithm said, let there be data. So you initially begin by showing rankings to your consumers. You take into account every action that the consumer does, what products they click on, what products they add to cart, what products they view, and so on. Now, all of this consumer data goes into your black box algorithm, including the data from the prior consumers. The algorithm combines all of this, comes up with a popularity metric, and then decides what ranking to show the next customer. Okay. The reason this is a cycle is that you're slowly repeating this process for consumers. I'm using the first 10 consumers to determine what ranking I should be showing the 11th consumer. I'm then using the first 11 consumers to determine the ranking for the 12th one, and so on and so forth. This is exactly why this is referred to as human-in-the-loop analytics. Okay? I want you all to kind of remember this term even after this talk, because this is something that you're all going to see increasingly in online platforms. Human in the loop, what does this mean? This means that the data and the analytics that you get from the platform are inseparable from the people who give you this data. In other words, it's not just enough to come up with a good source of data analytics, but you have to take into account consumer behavior. You have to take into account incentives that people have. Okay? Only when you take into account all of these factors, then your system will be designed quite well. All right. So we talked a lot about the popular ranking versus a diverse ranking. So the first thing that we did when we started working with Wayfair was try to understand, hey, is the popular ranking any good? What's the problem with this ranking, right? Surely, if the platforms have been using this for dozens of years, maybe there's something good that's going on with the platform, with the ranking. Now, unfortunately, we discovered that popularity rankings have a serious problem. And I want to illustrate that with a very simple example. So let's say that Wayfair is having a sale on your living room furniture. So there are 5 products here. This is just an example, by the way. So there's a couch, a love seat, or whatever this is supposed to be, a desk, and a computer table. Oh, this is a coffee table, sorry. I have 4 consumers, Adamant consumer 1, DD consumer 2, Velma consumer 3, and Santa Simpson consumer 4. By the way, these are representative of the kind of actual consumers that we had on the platform. All right. So these consumers have heterogeneous preferences over these products. So a green check indicates that the consumer likes the product, and a red cross indicates that they don't like the product. So you have 2 people liking the first 3 products. So these ones are the most popular products. And I have only 1 consumer liking product 4 and 5. So these are clearly the least popular product. Now, what happens when I use this popularity ranking? Well, for simplicity, let's assume that all my consumers are on the mobile platform. So they just look at the first 3 products, and then if they like it, that's great. If they don't like it, they just leave the platform. Now, here's what's going to happen. My first 3 consumers, they're going to look at the first 3 products. They're going to like everything that they see. They're completely hooked. They're on board at the event, just like when I saw the steamer and I was extremely appealing. Sorry, I found it extremely appealing. And they're going to stay on for the event and go ahead and purchase these things. That's great. But look at what happens to customers 3 and 4. Their attention span is only 3. So they look at the first 3 products. They don't like anything that they see. So they're going to think, this event kind of seems very homogeneous. I'm not really interested in buying a couch. I'm just going to go on and check out other things on the platform, or maybe move to Amazon where the things are more exciting, right? So this is kind of the same thing that in the example that I mentioned earlier, because if you rank your popular products on the top, you're going to leave a lot of customers on the table. And the reason this happens is that your customers are very, very heterogeneous. Okay. So our main study of Wayfair found out that the popularity ranking can really lose a lot of consumers. And there's no particular reason that platforms should cling on to that. You should move from popularity to diversity. So how good is diversity? Can product diversity make a difference? Well, to answer this question, we did a counterfactual data analysis. What do I mean by that? Well, we looked at the data from Wayfair. We used this data to construct customer profiles. Then we simulated those customers and we tried to ask the counterfactual question. What products would the customers click on, or how would they behave if I showed them a completely different, a more diverse ranking? That's why it's the counterfactual, right? Because when I come up with a new algorithm that incorporates diversity, I need to understand the counterfactual. Before I go ahead and roll out and test this algorithm, we need to understand using data how this would perform. All right. What our results showed was actually very surprising even for us. So in this plot, we considered 6 events, event A, B, C, D, E, F. The gray bar that you see was the performance of Wayfair's static default algorithm. And the green whiskers plot that you see is the performance of our algorithm. What we found is that incorporating diversity into your assortment, okay, using a more diverse assortment can improve customer engagement by anywhere between 12 and 30%. Now, let me give you some context for those numbers. So a few years ago, by the way, YouTube came up with a new paper where they unveiled their state-of-the-art fancy deep learning algorithm. And they showed that this deep learning algorithm, which is like super complex, has dozens and thousands of layers and neural networks inside, can only get a 4% improvement in customer engagement. Well, what we showed is even more surprising, right? Because we said, hey, deep learning is great. You should all use deep learning when you can. But what you should really be doing is kind of re-examining your whole approach from scratch. Because when you can rethink your system from the first principles, you can get something that improvement that's much better. All right. So the main lesson from this part of the talk is going to be that product diversity matters. You have to keep this in mind if you want to appeal to a heterogeneous pool of consumers. All right. In the last and probably the most fun part of this talk, I want to talk about product rankings, what sellers do to manipulate product rankings, and fake reviews. Okay. Now, as with any question, the right place to start here is from the motivational side. Okay. Before answering any question, before designing the system, what I would really like to understand is why do people go about manipulating their product rankings? Now, why do people put fake reviews on Amazon? Well, there are 2 reasons for it. The more obvious reason is that by putting a fake review, you can trick the consumer into purchasing your product. Sure, absolutely true. But there's a less obvious reason as well. Okay, remember, in order for a consumer to get to your product, they have to actually see this in the first page of their search results, right? So a more important reason why people engage in these fraudulent activities, including fake reviews, is not to trick the consumers, but actually to trick the algorithm. Because remember the popularity pipeline we talked about. Okay, the algorithm cares a lot about how many reviews and how many 5-star reviews you have. So as you come up with more and more fake reviews, you're actually tricking the algorithm into ranking your product higher and higher, which is going to lead to more clicks and more purchases and more reviews. It's a vicious cycle, okay? And that's exactly what sellers, and unfortunately, that's what they care about. Now, Now that we have a good understanding, I want to kind of go back to this human in the loop analytics plot that we talked about, right? Remember what we said here. We said that the platform harvests data from all the consumers who actually are on the platform. So what the sellers are doing is actually quite ingenious, okay? In some sense, what they're doing is not exactly illegal, though it goes against the terms of Amazon. What they're doing is they're manipulating the data that goes into the black box. This is super clever because once you manipulate the data that goes into the black box, I now get to control what ranking all my future consumers see. So by introducing a small twist early on in the process, you can kind of affect the outcome for dozens and dozens of consumers and leading them to what is ostensibly a suboptimal product. Okay, and I'm going to be honest, algorithmic manipulation is a huge problem across dozens of platforms. Remember clickbait and all the fake news that we see around us? Well, that's also a part of algorithmic manipulation, okay? The reason that's such a big deal is one, is that people end up clicking on these clickbaity articles. But what algorithms do is they observe that people click on these clickbaity articles, and then they start amplifying these articles by recommending these to dozens and dozens of people, okay? So algorithms amplify bad decisions that people make. Never forget that. All right. I know I'm kind of running out of time here, and Sisha is probably giving me the nasty eye. So let me very quickly ask the final poll question. What percentage of reviews on Amazon are fake? Sisha, can you launch the poll?
Yes, this is fascinating. Your talk is amazing. I'm going to launch what percentage of reviews on Amazon are fake. So I'm going to ask you to please go to that question in the live cast. I'm going to give you 5 to 10 seconds around that. Please answer what percentage of reviews do you think on Amazon are fake?
Sisha, I'm going to play a video while people answer the question. Is that okay?
Oh, of course. Please go ahead.
All right.
Counterfeit goods to fake N95 masks, price gouging to disappearing orders, shoppers on Amazon have a growing need to proceed with caution before clicking buy now. Since Amazon's early days, reviews are the one big metric customers rely on to determine the quality and authenticity of a product. Turns out, many of those reviews can't be trusted.
The review system, as of today, is broken. Before the pandemic, the usual benchmark around our average fake reviews was 30%. The norm has now become close to 35%, 40%.
In recent years, thousands of fake reviews have flooded Amazon and Walmart, eBay, and others, just as sales numbers have skyrocketed. And as shoppers stay home, online orders are up 57% since the same time last year, and the number of reviews is up 76%.
There's an element where you simply want to trust those stars and you want to trust the numbers, because if you can't trust that, how do you know what you're buying?
From Facebook groups where bad actors solicit paid positive reviews to bots and click farms that upvote negative reviews to take out the competition, fake reviews have boosted sales of unsafe products, caused huge brands to sever ties with Amazon, and hurt business for legitimate sellers.
All right. Sisha, do you want to share the screen?
Yes, I can do that. Wow. I feel like such a much smarter shopper right now because of your session. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, Professor Sekar, can you see that?
Yeah.
Wow. So what?
The smartest crowd I've given a talk to.
Can you see that, Professor Sekar?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So is this what you thought?
People are pretty much on the dot here, because I was expecting people to guess it's much lower, but it looks like a majority of the people got it to 30 to 35% mark. So awesome job, everyone. Well done.
And just a reminder to everyone, we also have a trivia contest happening. So make sure you fill that out to get prizes as well, because they look like they're doing really well. Professor Sekar, back to you.
All right, I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to quickly wrap the talk up. I want to kind of convey how big a problem fake reviews are, right? And it's not just fake reviews, by the way, because remember what we talked about under the things that go into your popularity pipeline? Well, everything in that pipeline, starting from reviews to your score to the number of clicks that you get, all of these can be manipulated. There are dozens, actually, I'm sorry, I say dozens, I meant thousands of Facebook groups where you have these sellers, shady sellers, soliciting fake reviews. And you know what's so clever about them? They actually encourage the people to purchase the product and then return it back to the seller using side channels. Because once you purchase the product on Amazon, you now have a verified review, which people trust a lot more. And you know what's the scary part? If you have an authentic product on Amazon, your competitor can actually hire these click farms or the review bots or the review farms to give you a negative review. So it's not just positive fake reviews that you have to look out for, it's also the negative ones. Now, if you're like me, you're going to be super outraged at this point, right? What the hell is Amazon doing about these? Well, let's be fair. Amazon is trying really hard to tackle this problem. So Amazon is basically using machine learning to identify suspicious behavior, suspicious IP addresses and click behaviors, and natural language processing to look at the words that are in the review and try to identify and de-emphasize reviews that are uninformative. But here's the problem. All of Amazon's efforts are too little, too late, okay? Number one, this is a very leaky process because Amazon has not successfully clamped down on all fake reviews. A lot of fake reviews do get through the holes. Number two, Amazon takes a while to clamp down on these fake reviews, right? To identify that someone is fake, you have to get enough data about them to make a positive determination. Now, by the time you take down a fake review, unfortunately, the damage is done. But you know what's the scariest part about this? Is that fake reviews are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Okay, and I'm observing this myself, by the way, because in products which are highly competitive, I can no longer tell whether a review is fake or real. Fake reviews, such as the ones that you see here, by the way, this is an actual bona fide fake review, seem pretty real to me, right? The name looks real, the date looks fine, the title looks funny. Guess what? This turned out to be a fake review. So honestly, Amazon is just playing a game of cat and mouse or whack-a-mole the whole time. Because by the time Amazon shuts down a bunch of fake reviews, these fake reviewers get a lot smarter and they start becoming more and more sophisticated. So what we really need to do is we need to be proactive in taking down fake reviews, and we need to be reactive in and not reactive, such as what's happening. Okay. Now, to actually answer this question, we came up with a new approach that I want to very briefly touch upon and then move. So one, the main idea behind our approach is never put all your eggs in one basket. Okay. Don't use a single learning algorithm. Use multiple machine learning algorithms so that at any point of time, you keep these bad actors on their feet. Now, number two is actually diversity, or using diverse rankings can also help in combating fake reviews. Why is that? Well, the number one reason for fake reviews is this race for popularity or visibility among the sellers. So by de-emphasizing popularity and by emphasizing diversity, you're kind of reducing the incentives for people to manipulate their scores. Because remember, you cannot manipulate your product features or your diversity. You can only manipulate how popular it is or how many reviews it has. Okay? And we actually showed that this approach, which does not put all your eggs in one basket, can actually improve upon what Amazon is doing at the moment. All right. So I want to end with 4 quick points, right? One is that information is the new incentive. Okay? It's no longer prices, no longer discounts. Information itself can be used to influence consumer behavior. Number 2 is that don't just trust popularity. Remember to always mix popularity with diversity. Number 3 is human in the loop analytics, which is super important. And the final point, never ever let anyone tell you that machine learning is unbiased and that algorithms are always true. Remember, algorithms are designed by people, and just like the people who design the algorithms themselves can be manipulated. All right. So in 1 minute, I'm going to quickly talk about A/B testing, which is one of my favorite topics when it comes to marketing in online e-commerce. So what I'm really enjoying these days is that all sorts of online platforms, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, Facebook, even the ones who use email marketing have completely embraced A/B testing. That's fantastic, because guess what? This is like a 100-year-old concept, by the way. The statistician Ronald Fisher came up with this in the 1920s. But while you're using A/B testing, I want you to be aware of certain pitfalls that could happen. Okay, one is the presence of what is usually known as confounders. So let me take the example of showing stocking decisions. So one thing that sellers like Amazon are doing is increasingly showing you how many items that you have left in stock. Now, suppose that you want to test whether this is effective or not. The biggest mistake people make is they combine these stocking decisions with discounts. So unfortunately, when this happens, you have a confound, because you don't know if the improvement to sales is coming from the discount or if it's coming from showing the availability. Two, and what's more deadly, is that even if you do a randomized trial, right? So let's say that I put 50% of my products where I show how many items are left, and the other 50% have no scarcity triggers or pressure points. You have to be very, very careful in this case, because putting a new incentive on one of these products can affect the demand of the substitute products. So even if you have a randomized trial, if you have interactions between the two groups, then your trial is not going to be perfect. Your results could be corrupted. Okay. Three, always be careful of unintended side effects. So for example, if you show how many units are left and you think this encourages consumers to purchase it, that could be absolutely true. But guess what? Showing how many units are left not only increases the sales, but also increases the number of people who return the product before a month. So when you pressurize customers to purchase your product, they are going to end up returning the product with greater frequency. So always be careful of unintended side effects. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much, and I will leave you with some super fun reviews that you see on Amazon. Thank you. We all talk about fake reviews, but I think the more fun things are the troll reviews. Thanks everyone, and hopefully we have enough time for some questions.
Wow. Oh my gosh. This was phenomenal. Professor Sekar, thank you so much for sharing your research insights with us. As an alumnus myself, it was great to be back to class, and I can't wait to talk to you a little bit more. We have a number of questions in the queue for you. If it's okay, I think we still have 5 minutes. I hope we can get to them all. I'm going to read the most popular ones. The first one, I think I know the answer, but maybe we need you to expand a little bit for us. The first question for you is, if you have a new product, how can you move up on the Amazon ranking? So this product won't have any history or customer reviews. Can you help us understand how to position our product if it's new?
Honestly, the number one thing that you can do is end up purchasing some ad slots on Amazon so that it displays your product at the very top. Because once you get that initial visibility on the new product and you get a certain number of reviews, that's enough to sustain you to move on and on. Now, in the absence, or if you cannot get these sponsored slots, and obviously I'm not going to encourage you to get fake reviews or anything like that, I think the best thing you can do is the price, because Amazon cares a lot about competition, having competitive prices. So I think the number one thing that new products can do is either lower the price or offer a competitive discount so that Amazon realizes that your product is priced well and starts kind of showing it to more consumers. And two is that a lot of consumers kind of sort from low to high when it comes to price. So I think keeping a low price at the beginning or offering discounts is another good way to kind of lure in a lot of new customers. Finally, another thing that you can do depending on the type of product is if you have active Facebook groups or a small clientele, then I think what you want to do is try to attract a small niche clientele that's very, very passionate about your product and start offering them this product at either a lower price or offering them the product for free, so that then people purchase it and then start giving reviews on Amazon. So remember, if you have a new product, I think what you have to do is you have to subsidize products for a while to get people to purchase it and to avoid what is called as a cold start problem. Now, once you do that, and hopefully if your product is sufficiently distinguished from the other products, I think you can start getting enough momentum to kind of keep this sustaining on its own.
Okay, those are all really great tips. Thank you for that. The second question we have here for you is, would you have any tips to avoid falling into the trap of these algorithms?
Oof, that's pretty vague, but let me
And rankings? I don't know. Sorry, it says, would you have any tips to avoid falling into the traps of these algorithms and rankings? I don't know if that's any better.
So what I would recommend, and what I'm noticing a lot among, I think, influencers and content creators on YouTube, is that they start over tailoring their content to algorithms. Don't do that, okay? For example, let's say that you think a certain feature matters a lot, right? I heard recently a podcast where the YouTube influencer said that he uses a white background for his thumbnails because that helps him get more views in the thumbnail. Maybe that works. I'm kind of hesitant about it. But the thing I would like you all to keep in mind is that YouTube, Amazon, Netflix, all of these platforms, they keep tweaking their algorithm constantly, okay? So don't overfit your data to what the algorithm does. Always keep your approach broad. Now, if you have something that works, that's great, keep doing it, but don't over specialize in one thing. Because the minute you do that, and the minute all your videos or all your products kind of tune to one aspect of the algorithm, if Amazon changes their algorithm, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So never overfit, keep your approaches broad, and try to appeal to as many things as possible at the same time instead of appealing to just one aspect of the algorithm.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Professor Sekar. There are more questions coming in for you than we have time for. We are right almost at time, but thank you everyone so much for your questions.